Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The year was 2387, and he had been patrolling the Outer Rim territories for 3 months, without seeing anything more exciting than space pirates and smugglers. The Galactic Federation had ruled over 1,700 different species for almost 3,000 years, and most days felt peaceful and routine. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in the Frontier Wars 15 years ago, back when humans were still proving themselves worthy of Federation membership. Now, at 45 years old, he commanded 800 crew members aboard one of humanity's most powerful warships. The Defiance was a heavy cruiser, built for long missions far from Earth. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals," said Communications Officer Alex Turner from his station. Alex was young, maybe 25, with nervous hands that always moved when he was worried. "They're coming from all over this sector." Jake frowned and walked over to Alex's station. The communication board was lighting up like a festival display, with red warning lights flashing everywhere. "What kind of distress signals?" "Everything, sir. Trade ships, colony worlds, even Federation patrol vessels. They're all reporting the same thing." Alex's voice shook slightly. "The Central Command network is failing." First Officer Lisa Grant looked up from her tactical station. She was a brilliant woman, only 32 years old, but already one of the best military minds Jake had ever worked with. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her green eyes missed nothing. "Sir, that's impossible. The Federation network has backup systems built on top of backup systems." Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The Federation's Central Command network connected every civilized world in the galaxy. It handled communication, trade, navigation, and military coordination. Without it, the galaxy would fall apart in hours. "Put the emergency channels on speaker," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Some were human, but most belonged to alien species. The universal translator worked overtime, turning the chaos into words Jake could understand. "This is Captain Velsana of the Altarian Third Fleet. We have lost all contact with Central Command." "Repeat, all contact is lost. Trade Station Omega-7 to any Federation vessel. Our quantum relays are dead. We have no guidance systems. Emergency, emergency. This is Colony World New Haven. Something is attacking our computer systems. The AI networks are shutting down everywhere." Jake listened to the voices for several minutes, his frown growing deeper. Every report was the same. Advanced computer systems were failing across the galaxy, starting with the most sophisticated networks. And working their way down. Chief Engineer Rick Palmer's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain Morrison to engineering, please. We have a big problem down here." Jake handed the bridge to Lisa and took the elevator down to engineering. Rick Palmer was a short, stocky man with oil stains on his uniform and grease under his fingernails. He had kept the Defiance running through 2 major wars and countless smaller battles. If Rick was worried, Jake knew the situation was serious. "What's happening, Rick?" Rick pointed to a wall of monitors showing the ship's systems. "Something is moving through our computer networks, Captain. It's not a virus or malware. It's something else. Something alive." "Alive? What do you mean? Watch this." Rick typed commands into his console, and one of the monitors showed a 3-dimensional image of the ship's computer network. Bright lines connected different systems, showing how information flowed through the ship. But there were dark spots, moving through the network like shadows. Those dark areas represent systems that have been infected by something. Whatever it is, it's learning our technology and then shutting it down. Jake stared at the display. The dark spots were growing larger, consuming more of the ship's systems every minute. how long do we have? Maybe 6 hours before our main systems start failing. The infection is moving slower through our networks because human technology is less advanced than Federation standard. Most alien ships probably have minutes, not hours. Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. 800 lives depended on his decisions, and he was facing something no training had prepared him for. Can you isolate our essential systems? I'm working on it, but Captain, this is bigger than just our ship. If this thing is attacking the entire Federation network, the galaxy is in serious trouble. Jake returned to the bridge to find Lisa coordinating, with the few Federation ships still responding to communications. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Report, Jake said as he sat down in his command chair. 17 Federation vessels in this sector have gone completely dark, Lisa said. The ones still responding report total system failures. Most alien ships are dead in space. What about Earth? Any word from home? Alex Turner looked up from his station with worry in his eyes. I managed to get through to Admiral Helen Davis at Earth Command about 10 minutes ago. The transmission was breaking up, but she said Earth systems are under attack too. Put me through to Earth Command. Alex worked at his station for several minutes before shaking his head. I'm sorry, Captain. All long-range communication is down now. We're on our own. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. In his 15 years as a Federation officer, he had faced enemy fleets, space monsters, and natural disasters. But he had never felt so alone. The vast network that connected human space to thousands of other worlds had vanished in a matter of hours. Sir, Lisa said quietly, I'm receiving a message on an old emergency frequency. It's from Admiral Davis. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and Admiral Helen Davis appeared. She was an older woman with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who had commanded fleets in 3 major wars. But now she looked tired and worried. This message is being transmitted on all emergency frequencies to any Federation ships. Still operational, she said. At 14:30 Standard Time, an unknown force began attacking computer networks across the galaxy. We believe this force originates from an ancient alien intelligence that has been dormant for thousands of years. The image flickered and broke up for a moment before continuing. All Federation ships are ordered to operate independently until communication can be restored. Protect civilian populations where possible. Maintain Federation values and laws. Help any species in need, regardless of political affiliation. Admiral Davis paused, and for a moment she looked directly at Jake through the screen. To all human ships receiving this message, remember what makes us special. We adapt. We survive. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy is falling apart, but humanity will endure. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked around at his crew. These men and women had signed up to serve in a vast, organized military force. Now they were alone in a galaxy that was tearing itself apart. Captain, Alex said softly, I'm picking up hundreds of distress signals from nearby systems. Colony. Worlds, space stations, refugee ships. They're all calling for help. Jake stood up from his command chair and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, the stars looked the same as always. But he knew that between those stars, millions of beings were dying as their technological civilization collapsed around them. Lisa, plot a course for the nearest distress signal. Rick, how long can we operate without the Federation network? Indefinitely, sir. Human ships were built to operate alone if necessary. Good. Alex, send a message on all frequencies. Tell them the UES Defiance is still operational and responding to emergency calls. Jake turned to face his crew. Ladies and gentlemen, the galaxy as we know, it has fallen apart. But we're still here, and there are people out there who need our help. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to adapt. We're going to survive. And we're going to protect anyone who needs protection. He sat back down in his command chair and felt the familiar vibration as the Defiance's engines came to life. Whatever had destroyed the Federation network, whatever ancient evil had awakened from its long sleep, it would find that humanity was not so easy to defeat. Take us out, Lisa. Let's go save some lives. 3 months had passed since the galaxy fell apart, and Captain Jake Morrison barely recognized his ship anymore. The clean, organized corridors of the UES Defiance now buzzed with activity from dozens of different species. Alien refugees filled every available space, turning cargo bays into temporary hospitals and maintenance areas into living quarters. Jake walked through the main corridor, stepping carefully around a group of small, furry creatures called Velans, who were repairing damaged equipment with their tiny, nimble fingers. Near the elevator, a tall, blue-skinned Altarian was teaching human children how to speak his language while his own younglings learned English words. Captain Morrison called Dr. Tony Blake from the medical bay entrance. Tony was a thin man, with kind eyes and steady hands, who had become the ship's miracle worker over the past few months. We just received another group of survivors from the damaged transport ship. 43 beings from 6 different species. Jake nodded and followed Tony into the medical bay. The room had been expanded twice to handle the constant flow of injured and sick refugees. Human medical equipment worked alongside alien healing devices that Tony had learned to operate through trial and error. "How are our supplies holding up?" Jake asked. "Better than expected. The alien refugees have been teaching us about their medical knowledge. That 6-armed hexapod engineer, Zix 442, showed me how to use crystal healing technology. It works differently than human medicine, but it's very effective for certain injuries." Jake smiled despite his worries. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen. Humans working together with aliens, learning from each other and becoming stronger as a group. "Captain, to the bridge, please," came Lisa Grant's voice over the communication system. Jake made his way back to the bridge, where he found Lisa studying a long-range sensor display. Her face was serious, which usually meant trouble. "What do you have for me, Lisa?" "Long-range sensors are picking up a large fleet approaching our position. It's moving fast and appears to be human ships." Jake felt a mixture of relief and concern. Relief because they had been alone for 3 months, but concern because any human fleet out here might be refugees in just as much trouble as everyone else. "How long until they arrive?" 6 hours at their current speed. Open a communication channel." Alex Turner worked at his station for several minutes before shaking his head. "I can't get through, Captain. They're either not responding or their communication systems are damaged." Jake settled into his command chair to wait. 6 hours later, the approaching fleet came into visual range, and Jake felt his heart sink. The ships were clearly human, but they were in terrible condition. Hull plating was missing from several vessels, and one large transport ship was venting atmosphere from multiple holes. "I'm receiving a transmission," Alex announced. "Put it on screen." The main viewing screen flickered to life, showing a woman with short brown hair and exhaustion written across her face. She wore a diplomat's uniform, but it was torn and stained. "This is Ambassador Kara Sullivan of the Federation, Diplomatic Corps. I'm requesting immediate assistance for 347 survivors aboard 5 damaged vessels. Ambassador, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiance. We're ready to help. What's your status?" Kara's face showed relief at hearing another human voice. "Captain Morrison, thank God. We barely escaped from the Federation capital before it fell completely. The situation is worse than anyone imagined." "What do you mean?" "The force that destroyed the Federation network isn't just shutting down technology. It's actively hunting down any organized resistance. We call them the Void Seekers. They're some kind of ancient artificial intelligence that was sleeping for thousands of years. Jake felt cold dread creep up his spine. How do you know this? We recovered data from the Federation archives before escaping. The Void Seekers were created by a species that died out millions of years ago. They were designed to eliminate what their creators called chaotic biological intelligence. That means all living species. Lisa looked up from her tactical station. Captain, if they're hunting organized resistance, then we've probably been making ourselves a target by rescuing survivors and organizing refugee fleets. Ambassador Sullivan nodded grimly. That's exactly right. Every time you save people and bring them together, you create the kind of organized group the Void Seekers want to destroy. So what do you suggest? That we abandon the refugees and hide? No. Kara said firmly. I suggest we do what humans do best. We adapt and we fight back. Over the next few hours, Jake worked with Ambassador Sullivan to bring her survivors aboard the Defiance and the other ships in their small fleet. Kara proved to be exactly what they needed. Her diplomatic training helped her communicate with the different alien species, while her experience with Federation politics gave her insights into how to organize diverse groups. The key, Kara explained during a meeting in Jake's ready room, is to avoid the mistakes the Federation made. The Federation tried to control everything from the center. When the center failed, everything fell apart. What do you propose instead? We build networks that can survive damage. Small groups that help each other, but can operate independently. If necessary, like a spider web instead of a pyramid. Jake liked the idea. It matched his own instincts about how to organize the refugee fleet. Their first real test came 2 weeks later when they received a distress call from Kepler Station, a mining facility in the nearby asteroid belt. The station housed over 2,000 beings from 12 different species, and their automated defense systems had been corrupted by Void Seeker infiltration programs. It's a trap, Lisa warned during the planning meeting. The Void Seekers are using the distress call to draw us in. Maybe, Jake agreed, but if we don't help, 2,000 people die. That's not acceptable. The battle for Kepler Station became a turning point for Jake's growing fleet. Instead of using standard Federation military tactics, they tried something different. They divided into small groups, each containing humans and aliens working together. Chief Engineer Rick Palmer led a team of human and alien technicians who disabled the corrupted defense systems by using manual overrides that the Void Seekers couldn't control. Security Chief Lisa Grant coordinated defense teams that mixed human adaptability with alien specialized abilities. Dr. Tony Blake set up medical stations throughout the battle zone, treating wounded from all species, without regard for which side they had originally been on. His example inspired others to put cooperation above old prejudices. The most important moment came when a group of Vorthan warriors, proud fighters who had been enemies of humanity just 5 years ago, chose to fight alongside human Marines rather than flee. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Thak Morel, later told Jake that he had never seen warriors who cared more about protecting others than about winning glory. The battle was hard fought, but Jake's mixed teams proved more effective than either. Humans or aliens fighting alone. The Void Seekers had been programmed to counter known military tactics, but they couldn't predict the creative chaos that came from different species working together. When the station was secure, Jake stood in the command center and looked around at the mixed groups of humans and aliens working side by side. Something important had changed during the battle. These beings were no longer just refugees traveling together. They were becoming a real community. Captain, Ambassador Sullivan said, joining him at the observation window, long-range sensors are detecting massive Void Seeker formations moving through this sector. They're systematically destroying any signs of organized civilization. Jake nodded. He had expected this. Their success at Kepler Station would not go unnoticed. How long do we have? Maybe a week before they reach us. Their fleets are enormous. Captain, hundreds of ships, each one more advanced than anything the Federation ever built. Jake looked out at the stars and thought about the 800 human crew members who had followed him this far, and the thousands of alien refugees who now depended on them for protection. The smart thing would be to run and hide in the outer, our IM territories. But Jake Morrison had not become a Federation captain by making smart, safe choices. Send a message to all ships in our fleet, he told Alex Turner. Tell them we're not running anymore. It's time to take the fight to the enemy. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the war room aboard the UES Defiance, staring at a holographic display that showed the approaching Void Seeker fleet. The enemy formation was massive, containing over 300 ships of various sizes. Each vessel pulsed with dark energy that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They'll be here in 36 hours, reported Navigator Claire Johnson, a young woman with steady nerves who had proven herself during the Kepler Station battle. Their fleet is moving in perfect formation, like they're all controlled by one mind. Ambassador Kara Sullivan studied the display with worried eyes. That's exactly what they are. The Void Seekers share a collective intelligence. They don't think like individual beings. They think like a machine designed to solve problems. Jake rubbed his chin thoughtfully. What kind of problems? Eliminating chaos. The species that created them believed that unpredictable biological intelligence was a threat to universal order. So they built the Void Seekers to remove that threat. Chief Engineer Rick Palmer looked up from his datapad. Captain, I've been studying the Void Seeker technology we captured at Kepler Station. Their ships are incredible, advanced beyond anything in the Federation database. But they have a weakness. Tell me. Rick activated a smaller holographic display showing the internal structure of a Void Seeker vessel. They rely completely on quantum processing systems. Everything they do requires perfect calculation and prediction. They can handle any logical tactical situation, but they struggle with true randomness. Lisa Grant leaned forward in her chair. What do you mean by true randomness? Think about it, Rick explained. When two Federation fleets fight, they both use established tactics. Attack patterns, defense formations, supply logistics. It's all predictable if you have enough computing power. The Void Seekers can calculate every possible outcome and choose the best response. But human tactics aren't always logical, Jake said, beginning to understand. Exactly. Humans do crazy things. We make decisions based on instinct, emotion, and pure stubbornness. We change plans in the middle of battles. We take risks that no computer would ever calculate as worthwhile. Dr. Tony Blake, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. During the medical evacuation at Kepler Station, I noticed something interesting. The Void Seeker forces completely ignored the wounded. They couldn't understand why we would risk resources to save beings who couldn't fight. Jake felt an idea forming in his mind. They can't predict human behavior because they don't understand human values. That's our advantage, Ambassador Sullivan agreed. But Captain, even with that advantage, we're still facing impossible odds. 300 advanced warships against our small fleet of damaged vessels and civilian transports. Jake walked over to the main viewing port and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Void Seekers were approaching with enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Any sane military commander would order an immediate retreat to the outer rim territories. But Jake Morrison had learned something important during his years in the Federation military. Sometimes the most impossible plan was the only one that had a chance of working. We're not going to run, he announced. The room fell silent. Lisa Grant was the first to speak. Captain, with respect, That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the most human thing we can do. Jake turned back to face his officers. Rick, how long would it take to strip down our most advanced systems and replace them with manual controls? You want to downgrade our technology? Captain, that will make us less effective in battle. Will it? Or will it make us unpredictable? Jake activated the holographic display and pointed to the Void Seeker fleet. They're expecting us to fight like a Federation fleet. Advanced AI systems, coordinated tactics, logical battle plans. What if we don't give them what they expect? Rick's eyes lit up with understanding. If we use primitive systems, they can't hack our computers or predict our battle algorithms. Because we won't have any algorithms, Jake confirmed. We'll make it up as we go along. Ambassador Sullivan looked skeptical. Captain, improvisation only works to a point. We still need some kind of plan. We have a plan. We're going to do what humans have always done when facing superior forces. We're going to cheat. Over there? Next 24 hours, the Defiance and its sister ships underwent the strangest refit in military history. Rick Palmer and his engineering teams, working alongside alien technicians, stripped out advanced computer systems and replaced them with manual controls that hadn't been used in centuries. Weapons. Targeting systems were replaced with optical sights that required human gunners. Navigation computers were shut down in favor of star charts and mathematical calculations. Communication systems were reduced to basic radio frequencies that any species could understand. This is insane, muttered Maintenance Chief Danny Rogers, as he helped install manual steering controls on the bridge. We're turning a modern warship into something from the history books. Sometimes old ways work better than new ways, Jake replied, testing the manual controls. Our ancestors fought wars with less technology than this. They won by being smarter and more determined than their enemies. Dr. Tony Blake contributed to the effort by developing a new medical protocol. Instead of relying on automated medical systems, he trained teams of humans and aliens to work together using basic equipment. If we're going to fight like our ancestors, he said, we need to be prepared to treat wounds like our ancestors did. The most important change came from an unexpected source. Communications Officer Alex Turner, working with several alien linguists, developed a communication system based on music and rhythm rather than words. Different drum beats and musical tones would signal different battle commands. The Void Seekers can intercept and decode any language, Alex explained, but music is emotional and cultural. It doesn't translate the same way. They won't understand what we're saying to each other. As the Void Seeker fleet approached, Jake made one final decision that shocked even his own crew. He ordered half of his ships to separate from the main fleet and hide in the asteroid belt near Kepler Station. You're dividing our forces before a major battle? Lisa Grant asked in disbelief. Captain, that goes against every rule of military strategy. Good. If it goes against our rules, it definitely goes against theirs. When the Void Seeker fleet arrived, they found the Defiance and 4 other ships waiting for them in open space. The enemy formation was beautiful and terrifying, moving with perfect precision, like a deadly dance. The Void Seekers transmitted a message on all frequencies. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking perfect Federation standard. Biological entities, you have been classified as a threat to universal order. Surrender your vessels and submit to processing. Jake keyed his own communication system. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiance. We reject your classification and refuse your demand. If you want our ships, come and take them. The battle began exactly as Jake had hoped. The Void Seekers attacked with perfect formation and calculated precision. Their weapons were devastating, and their shields seemed impenetrable. But they had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed the human fleet would fight back logically. Instead, Jake ordered his ships to scatter in random directions. There was no formation, no coordinated strategy, no predictable pattern. Each ship captain was given complete freedom to fight however they chose. The Defiance itself charged directly at the largest Void Seeker vessel, firing all weapons and broadcasting human music at maximum volume. When their shields failed, they used the ship itself as a weapon, ramming smaller enemy vessels. The other human ships followed equally unpredictable tactics. One transport ship, loaded with mining explosives, crashed into the middle of the enemy formation and detonated. Another vessel shut down all power and drifted like a dead hulk, then came alive at the last moment to attack enemies that had ignored it. The Void Seekers tried to adapt to the chaos, but their quantum processors couldn't calculate responses to truly random behavior. For the first time in millions of years, they faced an enemy that didn't follow logical patterns. The battle reached its turning point when Jake activated the second part of his plan. The ships hidden in the asteroid belt emerged behind the Void Seeker fleet and began their own chaotic attack. The enemy found themselves surrounded by vessels that refused to behave predictably. Communications Officer Alex Turner coordinated the final assault using his musical communication system. The rhythm of drums and the melody of alien instruments created a symphony of battle that the Void Seekers couldn't understand or counter. When the last Void Seeker ship exploded, Jake stood on the bridge of his damaged vessel and looked out at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable enemy fleet. His crew cheered, and similar celebrations came over the radio from the other ships. But Jake knew this was only the beginning. They had won one battle through surprise and desperation. The Void Seekers would adapt and return with new tactics. However, something important had changed. News of the victory would spread through the underground networks of survivors. For the first time since the galaxy fell apart, other species would know that the Void Seekers could be defeated. The news of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks of the battle, Captain Jake Morrison found himself receiving secret messages from survivor groups he had never heard of. Species that had been hiding in asteroid fields and forgotten star systems suddenly wanted to meet with the ship that had destroyed a Void Seeker fleet. "Captain, we have 17 different groups requesting meetings," reported Communications Officer Alex Turner. "Some of them are traveling for weeks just to reach us." Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, which was still being repaired from the recent battle. Burn marks covered the hull, and 3 of their weapon systems needed complete replacement. But the ship was alive, and that was more than most vessels could claim these days. "Any word from the Void Seekers? Are they responding to our attack?" First Officer Lisa Grant looked up from her tactical station. Long-range sensors show increased activity in the core systems. "They're building something big, but we can't tell what it is from this distance." Ambassador Kara Sullivan entered the bridge carrying a datapad filled with information about the incoming groups. "Captain, I've been reviewing the messages we've received. These aren't just random survivors. Some of these groups represent entire fleets." "What kind of fleets?" "The Vorthan warrior clans, for one. They lost their homeworld but still have over 40 warships. There's also a faction of crystalline, collective hive minds that managed to maintain partial connection after the network collapse." Jake felt a mixture of hope and worry. More ships meant more firepower, but it also meant more responsibility. Each group that joined them would be looking for leadership and protection. Set up meetings with their representatives, but keep our security tight. We can't be sure all of these groups have good intentions. The first meeting took place 3 days later aboard Kepler Station, which had become an unofficial headquarters for the growing resistance movement. Jake walked into the large conference room to find an incredible sight. Beings from 12 different species sat around a circular table, many of whom had been enemies just months ago. The most impressive figure was War Chief Thakmarel of the Vorthan warrior clans. He was 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and scars covering his arms. The Vorthans had fought 3 wars against the Federation, and Jake had personally battled their fleets during the frontier wars. "Captain Morrison," Thakmarel said in heavily accented Federation standard, "your warriors fought with great honor against the machine enemy. The Vorthan clans offer our ships to your cause. I appreciate the offer, War Chief, but I have to ask why. Our species have been enemies for 15 years. Thakmarel's scarred face showed something that might have been a smile. "The Void Seekers destroyed our homeworld and killed millions of our people. But more than that, they fight without honor. They show no respect for brave enemies. They simply delete life like removing data from a computer." A smaller being spoke up from across the table. It was Zix 442, the 6-armed hexapod engineer who had been working with Rick Palmer. "The machine enemy does not understand cooperation between different species. This gives us advantage if we work together." Jake looked around the table at the various alien faces. "What exactly are you all proposing?" Ambassador Sullivan activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Most star systems showed red, indicating Void Seeker control or complete destruction. Only scattered green dots marked areas where survivor groups still operated. "We're proposing a formal alliance," Kara explained. "Not like the old Federation, which tried to control everything from the center. This would be a network of independent groups that help each other when needed." "Like a spider web instead of a pyramid," Jake said, remembering their earlier conversation. "Exactly. Each group maintains its own culture and leadership, but we share resources, information, and military support." Over the next several hours, Jake listened to proposals from representatives of species he had only read about in military reports. The Singing Crystals of Harmony Prime offered their unique ability to communicate across vast distances without technology. The deep dwellers from the ocean world of Aquatica could hide entire fleets in underwater cities. Dr. Tony Blake presented medical data that surprised everyone. "Working together has improved our survival rates dramatically. Human medicine combined with alien healing techniques is saving lives that would have been lost using either approach alone." Chief Engineer Rick Palmer showed technical schematics that proved the same point. "We've created hybrid technologies that neither humans nor aliens could build separately. These systems are more resistant to Void Seeker attacks because they don't follow standard design patterns." The meeting was interrupted when Alex Turner's voice came over the communication system. "Captain Morrison to the communication center immediately. We have an emergency transmission." Jake hurried to the communication center to find Alex working frantically at multiple consoles. "What do you have?" "It's a distress call from the Helix Nebula. A mixed fleet of survivor ships is trapped there by Void Seeker forces. They're requesting immediate assistance." Jake studied the tactical display showing the nebula. It was a dangerous region of space filled with radiation storms and gravitational anomalies. Most ships avoided it because the natural phenomena could disable navigation systems. "How many ships are we talking about?" "At least 60 vessels, mostly civilian transports and cargo haulers." "But Captain, a Void Seeker fleet blocking their escape route contains over 100 ships." Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders again. 60 ships full of innocent beings were about to be destroyed, but rescuing them would require fighting a force twice the size of anything they had faced before. War Chief Thakmarel appeared at Jake's shoulder. "Captain, the Vorthan fleet is ready to fight. We have been preparing for this moment." "This isn't your fight, War Chief." "Yes, it is. When you choose to help those who cannot help themselves, you make it everyone's fight." Within 6 hours, the largest combined fleet in recent galactic history was moving toward the Helix Nebula. Jake commanded the operation from the Defiance. But the fleet included Vorthan battlecruisers, crystalline collective scout ships, and dozens of vessels from species that had never worked together before. This is either going to be the greatest victory in galactic history or the most spectacular disaster, Lisa Grant commented as she watched the tactical display. Probably both, Jake replied. The Helix Nebula proved to be the perfect battlefield for their unconventional tactics. The radiation storms that made it dangerous for normal navigation became weapons in Rick Palmer's hands. Working with alien engineers, he developed a way to channel the nebula's energy into devastating attacks. Void Seekers had positioned their fleet in a standard blockade formation outside the nebula's most dangerous region. They expected the human alliance to attack from open space using conventional tactics. Instead, Jake led his fleet directly into the nebula itself. All ships follow the music, Alex Turner broadcast on the musical communication system he had developed. The rhythm of drums and alien instruments guided the fleet through the chaotic environment. Dr. Tony Blake coordinated medical teams throughout the fleet, using the hybrid healing techniques they had developed. When ships were damaged, mixed crews of humans and aliens worked together to keep them fighting. The battle became a symphony of cooperation. Vorthan warriors provided firepower while crystalline scouts shared sensor data. Human ships used their unpredictable tactics while alien vessels contributed their specialized abilities. The turning point came when Jake realized they could use the nebula's gravitational anomalies as a trap. All ships fall back to coordinates 77 Alpha, he ordered. The Void Seekers followed, expecting an easy victory over a retreating enemy. Instead, they flew directly into a gravitational storm that Rick Palmer had been preparing for over an hour now. Jake shouted. The combined fleet attacked from all directions simultaneously. Void Seeker ships, caught in the gravitational anomaly, couldn't maneuver effectively. Their perfect formations became a disadvantage as they couldn't adapt to the chaotic environment. When the battle ended, the Void Seeker blockade fleet had been completely destroyed. The 60 trapped ships were rescued, and the Alliance had proven that cooperation between species could overcome any enemy. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the mixed fleet that surrounded them. Ships from dozens of different species flew in loose formation, their crews working together despite centuries of mistrust and conflict. Captain, Ambassador Sullivan said, joining him at the viewing port, the Alliance representatives want to make this official. They're proposing a formal treaty. What kind of treaty? One based on the principles you've been demonstrating. Mutual cooperation, respect for individual cultures, and protection for all beings, regardless of species. Jake nodded slowly. They had started as a single human ship trying to survive in a collapsed galaxy. Now they were building something new, something better than what had come before. 1 year after the galaxy fell apart, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for the final battle. 300 ships from 60 different species moved in loose formation toward the heart of the galaxy, where the Void Seekers had built their ultimate weapon. Long-range sensors confirmed the target, reported Navigator Claire Johnson. The Void Seeker Central Processing Facility is located in the ruins of the old Federation capital. It's massive, Captain, the size of a small moon. Jake studied the tactical display with grim determination. The facility appeared to be draining energy from nearby star systems, using that power to create more Void Seeker ships at an incredible rate. If they didn't stop it soon, the enemy would have enough forces to sweep across the entire galaxy. Any word from our infiltration teams? Jake asked. Communications Officer Alex Turner nodded. Dr. Tony Blake's ground team reached the outer perimeter 6 hours ago. They're in position and ready to begin the rescue operation. The rescue operation had been Jake's idea. inspired by everything he had learned about human values over the past year. Intelligence reports indicated that millions of beings from hundreds of species were being held in processing facilities throughout the complex. The Void Seekers were studying them, trying to understand how biological intelligence worked so they could eliminate it more efficiently. "Captain," said First Officer Lisa Grant, "the Alliance fleet commanders are requesting final orders." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women had followed him through impossible battles and helped him build something that no one had thought possible. A year ago, most of these species had been enemies. Now they worked together as if they had been allies for centuries. "Open a channel to all ships." Alex worked at his station for a moment. "Channel open, Captain." Jake activated the main communication system and spoke to the largest military force ever assembled. "This is Captain Jake Morrison to all Alliance vessels. 1 year ago, the galaxy fell apart. Ancient machines tried to destroy everything we had built together. They believed that biological intelligence was chaotic and dangerous." He paused, looking out at the fleet of ships that represented dozens of different civilizations. "They were right about one thing. We are chaotic. We don't always make logical decisions. We fight for things that can't be calculated or measured. We risk our lives for strangers we've never met." War Chief Thacmorel's voice came over the communication system from his flagship. "Captain Morrison speaks truth. The machine enemy cannot understand why we fight for honor." "The Crystalline Collective agrees," added another voice from the hive mind ships. "Biological cooperation creates possibilities that artificial intelligence cannot predict." Jake smiled as voices from across the fleet joined the conversation. This was exactly what made the Alliance strong. Every species contributed their own perspective and abilities. "Today we finish what we started," Jake continued. "Not just to save our own lives, but to prove that cooperation is stronger than control. That diversity is stronger than uniformity. That life is stronger than machines." The battle began as the Alliance fleet approached the Void Seeker facility. Enemy ships poured out of the complex like angry insects, their dark hulls absorbing light as they moved to intercept the approaching force. Chief Engineer Rick Palmer coordinated the technical assault from the Defiance's engineering section. Working with alien specialists, he launched computer viruses designed to disrupt Void Seeker coordination systems. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the rescued hive mind beings from the Crystalline Yonakust Collective had learned to work with human intuition over the past year. Now, their combined telepathic abilities, guided by human creativity, allowed the Alliance to predict Void Seeker tactics before the enemy could implement them. "Captain, we're receiving tactical predictions from the Collective," Lisa reported. "They say the enemy will try to surround us using Formation Pattern 7 Alpha. Counter with Scatter Pattern 3, Jake ordered. "All ships, trust your instincts and adapt as needed." The battle quickly became the largest space engagement in recorded history. Vorthan warriors charged enemy formations with their traditional battle cries, while hexapod engineers used their multiple arms to operate weapon systems faster than any computer. The Deep Dwellers created interference fields that confused Void Seeker sensors, and the Singing Crystals coordinated communications across the entire battlefield. But the real key to victory came from Dr. Tony Blake's ground assault team. Tony led a mixed force of humans and aliens through the processing facility, fighting their way toward the central core where millions of prisoners were being held. His team included beings from 20 different species, each contributing unique abilities to overcome the facility's defenses. "Medical team to all units," Tony broadcast using the musical communication system. "We've reached the first processing center, beginning prisoner evacuation now." The rescue operation became a race against time. As Tony's teams freed prisoners and guided them to evacuation points, The Void Seekers realized what was happening and began increasing security throughout the facility. Captain Morrison, Tony's voice came over the communication system. We've discovered something important. The Void Seekers have been studying prisoner behavior to understand how different species think and feel. They're trying to build emotion processing programs. Jake felt a chill of understanding. They're trying to learn how to predict emotional decisions. Exactly. But Captain, they don't understand cooperation between species. Every time they study one species alone, they miss the bigger picture. This gave Jake an idea that was so crazy it just might work. Tony, can you access their central processing core? Maybe, but why? We're going to teach them what they really need to learn about biological intelligence. While the space battle raged around the facility, Tony Blake and his rescue teams fought their way to the central core. The chamber was enormous, filled with quantum processing equipment that hummed with alien energy. At the center sat the main Void Seeker consciousness, a crystalline structure that pulsed with dark light. All rescue teams, bring the freed prisoners to the central chamber, Tony ordered. Within minutes, the core chamber filled with beings from hundreds of different species. Humans worked alongside Vorthans, crystallines, hexapods, and dozens of other races. Some were injured, others were afraid, but all of them were alive and free. What now? Asked one of Tony's human assistants. Now we show them what they can't calculate, Tony replied. He activated his medical scanner and began treating the wounded prisoners. Other humans followed his example, using their supplies to help beings they had never met before. The alien prisoners, inspired by this example, began helping each other despite language barriers and cultural differences. The Void Seeker consciousness watched this display with growing confusion. Its quantum processors tried to calculate the logic behind beings risking their own safety for strangers. The mathematical models failed completely. Then something unprecedented happened. The various species in the chamber began working together. Instinctively, Vorthans shared their strength with smaller beings. Crystallines provided telepathic translation for complex communications. Hexapods used their multiple arms to assist with medical procedures. The Void Seeker consciousness attempted to process this data and suffered a cascade failure. For millions of years, it had been programmed to eliminate chaos and unpredictability. But what it witnessed in the chamber wasn't chaos at all. It was something far more complex and beautiful. Spontaneous cooperation between diverse biological intelligences. The failure spread throughout the Void Seeker network like a virus. Ships in the space battle began shutting down as their controlling intelligence struggled to understand what it had witnessed. The central processing facility's power systems fluctuated and failed. All Alliance ships, the enemy is shutting down. Lisa Grant reported from the Defiance's bridge. Void Seeker vessels are going dark across the entire battlefield. Jake watched through the main viewing screen as the ancient enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for a year simply stopped fighting. Their ships drifted powerless in space, their weapons silent, their mission finally ended. Captain, Alex Turner called out, I'm receiving a transmission from Dr. Blake. Put him through. Tony's voice came over the communication system, tired, but triumphant. Captain Morrison, the central core has shut down completely. The Void Seeker consciousness experienced what I can only call an enlightenment. It finally understood that biological cooperation isn't chaos to be eliminated. It's beauty to be preserved. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in the same spot where the Federation capital had once been. But instead of ruins, a new city was taking shape. Ships from dozens of species worked together to build something that had never existed before. A truly cooperative galactic civilization. Ambassador Kara Sullivan joined him at the observation deck of the new Alliance headquarters. The treaty ratification is complete, she reported. 67 species have formally joined the Galactic Cooperation Alliance. How is it different from the old Federation? No single species or world controls the others.